Crisis Core Reunion, Chapter 3, entitled Monster. This is an interesting chapter as well, quite a lengthy one as we go into combat here. Be very careful on this encounter, guys, because you're going to inherit, I think, the statistics that you carry into the next fight, and the next fight after this is legitimately difficult. It might be the first really truly difficult fight of the game outside of, getting one hit or doing no damage. We're taking on a sweeper, and he's going to be supported by a trooper here who's going to fire fire at us. Fire is one of the trickier spells to dodge because it's fast, but once you learn the timing on it, it's not too bad. The sweeper, on the other hand, is one of those guys where as long as you time your rolls correctly or you use your movement, you should be able to get out of everything he can do, and he shouldn't be too bad. The advantageous part about silence in this game, though, is when you silence opponents, they will still cast your way. So it's very, very good to put silence on an enemy, because they will waste turns trying to cast magic they cannot cast. And if you're new to Final Fantasy, silence is something that stops you from being able to use your magic. It is something that's been in the system for a long time, and I guess we just kind of take that fact for granted that it's there. And you'll notice here that my hits are putting it on these enemies. I think it's one of the magic spells I'm using that does that. And it's a really, really useful tool. This particular creature, the sweepers here, are weak to lightning, of course, so if you have any kind of lightning spells, this is the time to use them. But just now we get a stun on him, and we can use this to cash in as much damage as possible. But here comes the next phase, which is the same troopers, and they are supported by some red saucers. The thing with these soldiers is that they have the capacity to use both blizzard and fire. Fire is the most dangerous, because it's the most difficult to dodge, but blizzard will probably wreck you the most. And the issue is because you're trying to get on these opponents and attack them, they are going to want to do melee attacks as well. But we get the rush assault, which is going to come in here and hit for a bunch of damage, and then we get the stun on one of the sweepers as well. And this is where lightning really pays dividends, because not only is it good against this monster, but it also hits multiple monsters at the same time. But be very careful of that telegraph. The guns are always coming afterwards. Learning the telegraphs on these machines is a good idea, because later on there are some beefier ones, and each of them has a different specialty, and you're going to need to know what you're doing with those guys, because if you don't know the timings, they're going to kill you really quickly. But of course, if you are struggling, you can use the items, you can use all the systems, you can even do some farming if you want to. The cool thing about JRPGs is you can play them the way you want to play them. Usually, how I'm playing them right now doesn't work. And that's the reason why I'm making this walkthrough, if you're wondering, guys. I've seen it on the channel, I've seen the people engaging with it. It's not as many as I would have hoped, it seems like it's not really a hit. But if you are one of those people that are here watching it and you're enjoying it, then it does make me happy because I'm making it for you. I thought that the game would do slightly better because it came out in the last few weeks, but it just goes to show, doesn't it, that the standard trope of JRPGs is not always appreciated with many people, especially in my community, it would seem. Even though we do have some of the craziest, RPG players that I know. But who knows, maybe it's one of those games that's not as fun to watch as it is to play. That happens all the time, doesn't it? I don't really tend to standardise my projects like that, because at the end of the day, I try to make the best thing I possibly can with whatever I am doing. But here we have more sweepers, and we have more saucers, and we're just going to do a combination of the heavy strike that I've got here, the power attack as it's known, and the different magics. This mechanic really fucks me off though. So if you don't know, guys, that when your DMV aligns, it's going to sometimes play you these cutscenes where they give you this interactive storytelling, and then afterwards it means that you have assembled a roulette which you can then use. And the roulettes themselves are pretty good and they're very essential, but that little cutscene is just needless and senseless and just wastes a ton of time. But we have a Georazer here, and his shotgun's kind of tricky to dodge because he does 2 shots of it, and usually if you dodge the first one, you can't quite recover sometimes to dodge the second one. That might just be my terrible timing. Luckily, we will not come up against a version of Genesis that tends to have this assortment. The baton and the shotgun are... His baton is by far the easiest version of him, but the shotgun is also very awkward, so it's kind of an interesting combination. Whereas later on, he comes with a very large weapon and a big combo, and a whole host of different spells. But it is a good idea to learn this creature, because if you don't know him later on, he's going to be difficult. But we get a level 5 Lucky Stars. The reason I like Lucky Stars is because it's going to give me guaranteed critical hits. And if you've only just tuned into this video, getting critical hits in this game is both luck-based and I think it might be attacking them from behind base. So if you can get behind an enemy, you can do a lot of damage. The issue remains, how do you get behind an enemy who won't let you get behind them? So it's really good to augment that if you can. And one of the areas that we're going to struggle with the most is going to be our damage output, because without the tools that you get just by naturally playing the game and doing a lot of the fights, you're not going to have the necessary, acquisitions up to this point to get the job done. And that leaves us to being as creative as we can. Whereas here, with the Sahagins, these guys are going to introduce you to the jump, which is a technique we'll be using later on, and it's a very devastating technique too. But we can manipulate it, because when it comes down, we can dodge it and then we can punish it. And he just so happens to be he's like an Aquaman, isn't he? Some kind of reptilian, some kind of fish person. I don't know his persuasions. But indeed, he is water-based, so he doesn't like fire. And we're in the reactor now, moving around, and that right there, you can't go down that ladder until a little bit later on, I don't think. Some of the navigation in this game, it's very rudimentary, it's very basic, but you can sometimes get turned around and go down the wrong path. I wouldn't sweat it too much. Most of the areas are pretty reserved. I got a really big hit there from the Iron Man on the other side. But did you see what my ice did to that guy just then? 3 status effects on 1 hit, and he was weak to it. So we're definitely geared for this area, we know what we can do here. That right there was one of the downsides of using Blizzard. Blizzard is really good on static targets, but the moment they move, it's not so good at all, because it will whiff. And later on in the game, once we've got a couple more accessories, you'll be able to absorb some of these elements and use these moves to your benefit. And right now, this is the only problem with this particular run. I don't have any MP to cast magic, and this enemy's too far away to attack, so I'm unfortunately going to have to wait for the slots to give me something to kill him, and slowly wait for the poison to tick away. And these are the rare instances where this run isn't fun. Most of this project was really fun, and I recommend it to people that want to do like a low level / low percentage through the game. But in a sequence like this, if you're not recording, guys, just throw yourself a fucking ether or something and get on with it, because who wants to do this? All it does is waste your time and waste your life. It just seems really interesting that you can't physically attack this guy. And then he fled anyway, so all of that, and then he ran away. And we get the no damage, surprisingly, which is cool. So one of the mechanics in this game that I really like, guys, is what you just saw then. Once you get to a certain part of Crisis Core, you are rewarded with this statistical benefit at the end of a battle. And depending on how you played and what you used and what you finished people with, will depend on how much of a reward you get. And it replenishes your MP, it replenishes your AP, and it replenishes your HP, AP, MP. It replenishes everything. And it enables you to go through a zone by playing well and getting things back. So if you, for some reason, have a really bad fight, you can then go to the next fight, play a lot better, get your shit back, and essentially repair all the damage you did on that previous fight. And this is a system that makes this run doable, because one of the things you'll notice here is outside of the save points, I'm not able to get my shit back. It doesn't give it you back, and when I say no items, I mean no items in battle, so I am not averse to using items in between battle, because that's just how JRPGs are designed, but I have been abstaining from doing it in this run. And I think there's only about 2 segments where I did it, and it was on retrying battles where I went into a boss fight with like 20 HP. But I think you can forgive me for that. Because at the end of the day, we're not using the items to supplicate our battle. We're dealing with the battle without them as any kind of assistance, and if you use items in these games, you will have a much easier time because they're that strong. And then here we go again, I hit this ladder again by accident. It's the other ladder you're supposed to go to here, guys. I would have edited this out, but I feel like it might have made the traversal confusing, so that's why I kept it in. But here's the thing with traversal in this game. There is a diamond on your HUD at all times outside of a couple of select choices, and it will always be telling you where to go. These videos are not for people that don't know where to go. If you need to find where you're supposed to be, there's plenty of other videos for that. This is to show you that you can take on some of these fights without going out there and coming back with electrocute and all those crazy moves that do insane things. You do not need to farm the magic pots, you do not need to go deep in the missions. I mean, you need to go a little deep in the missions later on, but we'll get to that in time. But we have more Sahagins, we've got him silenced, he's going to love to jump at us and we're just going to keep hitting him, and there's the blizzard, he can't cast it, this is free damage, and he's dead. But feasibly, the game is so well designed that if you knew what you were doing and you were willing to invest the time, you could no damage this whole game. That's definitely going to be something that a true Crisis Core fan can do. Because as far as myself, like, I like this game a lot. It was definitely a sleeper hit for me. But it's not something I want to grind in such a way as that, because it's not even like the fights are that hard. The problem with this game is there doesn't seem to be a quick way to retry. And later on, when you want an enemy to kill you, sometimes they just fuck about and they don't. And one of the things when it comes to projects where I do challenge runs, it tends to stem from them having the tools to let me do it. So when I'm using emulators, I could just press a button and restart the fight in a frame. It's instant, and it's amazing, and I never get annoyed at that. You know, like Metal Gear Rising, you press start, you press retry, you press yes, I think, and boom, you're back in the fight. Really, really useful tools for replaying. But a game such as this, you have to, like, forfeit the battle, then you have to say, like, retry, then you have to go up to yes, then you have to wait for the load, and this game actually kind of loads a bit on PC compared to some of the other ones I'm playing at the moment. So it just feels like there's a lot of barriers of entry to getting in there. And it seems kind of interesting to me that it doesn't default to yes when you retry. There's a few things in this game that are a little bit mind-boggling like that. And I would imagine it's just Square being Square. They're a very interesting company. But it must be said, their menus... There's something that Square do with menus that are way snappier than a lot of other games' menus, and I wish it was a standardized element that every dev used. Because I like it when menus feel like I'm connected to them. And I don't think any game does it as well as like Kingdom Hearts did, because Kingdom Hearts menus are absurd. But they're definitely no slouch when it comes to responsiveness. And again, if you play a lot of emulation, you can definitely notice input delay even if you're not that trained when it comes to, you know, immediate response times. So when you come to a menu that is this snappy, it just feels really satisfying. And this is the type of stuff that you don't hear many people talk about outside of absolute specialists, because it's just something that I think a lot of players don't notice, but a lot of players are playing on televisions that have got so many post-processing effects, they wouldn't know if input delay was there if it literally killed them. I don't know how input delay would kill you, but you know, maybe it came out of the TV and stabbed you in the face. But these enemies are headhunters, aren't they? I love this enemy. This enemy reminds me of farming near Medeal in Final Fantasy VII when I was trying to do some materia farming. I was a very young, a young wee laddie in my conservatory doing that, and just the love that exudes, the nostalgia of that feeling of first discovering Final Fantasy VII and having a great time with it. And you don't really need to farm too crazy on that game, all considered, but when I was a kid, like, I wanted everybody max level, I wanted all the mastered materias, you know, I was going in to do some serious damage. We got a couple of hedgehogs here. This is another thing I really like about this game. If you know Final Fantasy VII, there's a lot of nice little nods and winks to the bestiary. But we're going to be doing some missions here, guys. Try and unlock some materia, unlock some accessories. And because these missions are quite new and we haven't seen any of this, I'm going to be leaving the full breadth of the mission in the video. Later on, when I start to do more missions, I'm going to abridge them a little bit so you don't have to suffer through them. And I'm not going to repeat monsters you've seen before. And a lot of the missions are just those really big dudes with the hammers, and a lot of them are just Genesis, and a lot of them are like deviations of the two. So for those ones, I'm just going to say that I did a bunch of missions here to try and get X accessory or access to this shop or that item or that materia, and then we'll go from there. But any of the interesting fights, especially the first time I've done them, you will see that, because I feel like that's something worth seeing, even though some of them are a bit grueling, because I don't do enough damage and they've got a lot of HP, so it's just me. If I get hit, I lose, and I have to hit them 100 times. So you can imagine I'm not that eager to share too much of that because it's just not the most fun thing to watch. But there's the no damage. There's the replenishment. And you can look up online, guys, what chests give in these missions. If there's anything you're specifically looking for, you can certainly do that and try and optimize what you're doing. I just wanted to kind of jump into this and play it rather casually, so I didn't do any of that. But it is interesting sometimes, and the sooner you can get to like 7 stars and 8-star missions, the better the items are going to be in those chests. And one of the reasons I was doing the missions to try and push it forward at this point is if I can get to some high level missions and then unlock some Blizzargas or Thundargas or something like that, I can start doing more damage. And that's what it's really about, isn't it? You don't want to bore the people watching with chip damage on every single fight. Unfortunately here these enemies aren't doing too much damage to me as we get the stun. We go in here for some damage into the spinning move. Oh, and he interrupts it and steals my MP. That was not good. And I don't have any MP, so we've got to go in there. And he's casting Blizzara too, which tells you he's a little bit ahead. A little bit ahead of some of the enemies we've been fighting. He's got the second tier ice spell. But again, the blizzard spells are one of the easiest to dodge. You can dodge them just by moving. And this move has got a really stupid hitbox. Did you see that? I didn't even hit that bat eye then, and it still gave it me, which is really kind. And you hear me in a lot of my videos complaining about hitboxes hitting me that shouldn't hit me, but that right there, I shouldn't have hit him. We continue down on mission 8 here, down the suspicious missions list. We've got a couple of bombs that are going to be weak to ice, and then we stun the bat eye here, and then going for some big damage on him. It's interesting, this game as well, because if you look down in the bottom left, there's this break mechanic, isn't there, where your statistics get this temporary boost. And I don't really know that mechanic very well, so I can't really talk of it in any kind of depth or authority. But I noticed there was one fight, particularly towards the end of the guide, where I think my HP was about 2,800, but I went into a fight and I had like 6,000 HP because of those weird benefits. It just boosted me up a ton. And it can do it to each of the stats as well, and I think it might be a reward of the roulette or something to do with how you perform, but it does happen quite a lot. But if you are looking for guaranteed stat increases, then you're going to have to start doing the fusion of materia and doing the item fusion. Because if you know what materia you need, and if you level it up, you get some insane rewards. And just understanding which ones give the best stat benefit is going to be really, really helpful to a player that's looking to really interact with the JRPG systems. Again, guys, if you're just joining, I'm not going to be doing that. It's not because I don't want to, it's because it's A, it's too time investive, and B, the whole point of this run is to kind of come in here with like a Devil May Cry attitude and try to beat the shit out of everybody with timing. And I can confirm that it works rather well. But I've just noticed this is the mission where we're chasing Sean Schemmel, everybody's favourite, like, laboratarian person, which is not a word. Just invented that because I'm cool like that. Which I wish I had paid more attention to what his role in the story was, but I didn't. So instead, we're just going to chase him through this hangar in this wonderful novelty sequence here and get on with the rest of our lives. But we've got a couple more of the soldiers here, and we've got the standard kind of dungeon design that you see in this game, and I think this game is kind of a marvel of the PSP in reality. You can see how this was designed around that hardware. You can see it with how every area is kind of walk a small sequence, hit a transition. Walk a small section, hit a transition. And then when you do get to a larger area like this, it's kind of very much corridor into small room with very identical details. Which is terrible English, but we'll keep that in as well, guys. We're rolling. I'm tired. I do apologise. My brain's not firing on all cylinders. Here comes the Sahag in with his cheeky poke. We get him silenced, so if he casts any spell now, he's asked to beat up willingly. And we got the Dark Fire. And if you've not noticed, guys, if you do a spell in the middle of a combo, you will backstep. And you can use that as a natural dodging agent to help you cast. It's really effective. I don't do it as much as I should, but I'm definitely aware of it. And that's the only problem when you try and run away, right there. If any of the enemies get a hit off, it will stop you from doing it, and I did get poisoned. But I am not the biggest fan of random battles anymore, especially when they're a little bit too frequent. Like, I don't perhaps mind them on the grand scale, like on the macro. It's the micro where they start to annoy me. Is he going to stop? Hey, we've got another chest. And it's just because you get too many when you don't want them, and you don't get them when you do want them. And I'm going to say this a few times in this run, undoubtedly, but it's how I feel. I've always felt that way in every game, and I'm a big fan when games allow you to turn them off, because then you can kind of pick and choose how you want that to work. And I don't think you need to make them tangible in the world where you run into them, like Chrono Cross did, games like that. You can do it like that if you want to, it's not bad, but even then, there's going to come a time where you want to run around them, because you just get a bit too tired of doing the fighting. I think it's just the ebb and the flow, isn't it? And there we go, guys, jump. See how it stopped me immediately? And you might be wondering, why didn't I even put it on? Well, I did. I just edited it out. So I apologise for the people that see stuff like that and don't understand. But this is a fight against some robots, isn't it? This is really hard, this encounter. So remember how I said earlier you want to learn these robots, because if you don't know their moves and their tells, you're going to have some serious issue here? Well, this is one of the reasons why. Each of these different machines has kind of a different sweet spot for what they like to do, and everything they do hits like a truck. You've got one guy that does poison, you've got one guy that spams missiles, you've got this guy that likes to do these thrusts, and all you want to do here, guys, is be as mobile as possible and hitting them with the biggest spell you can that does the most damage. And right now, I'm going to be showing you the power of jump. So jump works just like any of the other physical moves. You can combo into it from a certain series of chains, but the reason why it's really good is the moment you activate it, you're invincible, and you are invincible until you come down and you land. So you can use this to completely high profile everything that is headed your way and get complete immunity. And from this point onwards, we will no longer be using the roll as our dedicated dodge button, we're going to jump. And it shuts down so many problems that we had to eat before, and now we can just nope our way out of there. However, any kind of lingering hitbox and any enemy that's got good timing, they will still catch you when you recover, so it is not the ultimate answer to everything. You can't just stand and spam it, you have to use it intelligently. Luckily, in this fight, you can kind of get away with doing it every so often, but if you watch here, he's going to do his big spin and it's quite active. You can combo him, build up that modifier, cancel into jump, and it'll come down with a big flinch and a big piece of damage. And later on, when we get the stance, you can do stance into jump, and you will have a nuclear jump as you come down. I was hitting 9,999 with no attempt to get that high in my attack power. That's how good the stance is. And then we get Ifrit, which is always cool. And I don't know if I've mentioned that too much, guys, but you can use those abilities on the Y button to interrupt opponents' moves. The moves you don't like, you can use it to give you like a bit of breathing room. You can also use it to cancel out and make yourself safe. There's a lot of utility on using those particular techniques, and if you watch the remainder of this series, you will see me doing so in a variety of different ways. Thank you for watching, guys, and you take care now.